What's up, guys? Coming back at y'all tonight. I'm going to be working on one of my personal vehicles. Just real quick, had some free time tonight. So I got my little 2002 Volkswagen Jetta in the shop, and it's got a fuel leak, pretty bad fuel leak I'm going to be taking care of. Let me flip the camera around and show you guys. So this is my little Jetta. It's a little 2002 diesel, engine code ALH. It's a little automatic. I've had probably 10 of these cars or so, buy them, not running or whatever, and fix them up, drive them for a while, and I sell them. It's kind of a easy way to make some profit off these little cars. This one in particular, I bought, a guy had it out behind his barn. He was gonna pull the engine and use it for like a Jeep or something like that to do a swap. These are really good little diesel engines. He kind of went a different route with the project. So I think I got this for like $1,200, $1,800, something like that. It's more than I usually pay for them. But when I bought it, he said the only problem was the oil drain plug was stripped out on the pan. So it wouldn't, he said you could put oil in it, it runs fine, but all the oil would drain out. So I didn't even try to start it. It had been sitting back behind his place for several years. So I didn't really care. I mean, it's whatever. I've rebuilt the engines in them before. It's no big deal. So I lit on the trailer and I get home, and the oil drain plug was fine. The only issue it had was the ECM. There's a engine control unit up under here, up under the cowl. It was bad. It was in theft mode. Usually it happens if they sit with a dead battery for so long, or if you disconnect it and connect the battery a bunch of times. So I had to get an ECM for it, and everything else, I've not done anything else to it but change the filters, and I think I've driven it about 10,000 miles, something like that. And the only issue so far that's popped up is the injection pump leaks a bunch of diesel. You can see where it's kind of wet around here. And this is just from me driving it up into the shop. That big puddle there of fuel. And usually these things will get about 40, 50 miles to the gallon, somewhere in their stock. They'll get about 450, 500 miles to a tank. This one I've been lucky to get 350 miles to a tank, and probably about 30, mid-30s miles to the gallon. And this thing just pours diesel out, and it hard starts because it loses prime. So I got this injection pump reseal kit from the local diesel supply distributor, OEM Bosch, part numbers, parts. So that's it. Comes with the whole, all the seals, gaskets, everything, O-rings you need to reseal that pump. And it's a pretty easy job. All you do is you take your lines off, and I'll set this up on a time lapse and go over it while I do it. But you take that line off there, which is your return line, and then this little rubber one. Take that off, and then you got 4 bolts, 2 here, and the top comes off. And then you got another 3. This one here runs all the way through both layers, but then you got that one, and that one, and the bottom half comes off. So the only thing you have to watch out for when you do this is that you have to keep everything in line, because these holes are slotted, and this whole thing can move back and forth, and if you get it out of whack, you'll be sitting there fighting it. You got to have a scanner to read. It adjusts the injection quantity. So if you get that out of whack, I think it affects idle and overall fueling. It's been a while since I messed with one, but definitely would not recommend doing this if you don't have a scanner to monitor your injection quantity after you do this. So as a matter of fact, I might throw the scanner on it right now before I tear it apart and see what injection quantity is at. And then when I put it back together, there's no way you can get it perfect, but when I put it back together, I can try to adjust it and monitor it to get it back to what injection quantity it was at. Other than that, I would say just take like a little scribe and cut a groove here in both the top and bottom. That way when you put it back together, you can kind of line it up right where your scribe mark is. Other than that, this little harness here, don't try and take it off. It's got bolts that hold it in, but it's like where it goes into the pump, it's kind of like a bonded material. You have to destroy it to get this off. So just let this kind of hang when you get the second half off. You'll see what I'm talking about here. I'll set it up on a time lapse and kind of go over everything when I get into it. But yeah, pretty simple. So I'll go monitor injection quantity right now. That's a good idea. See what it's at before we tear it apart. So here in the car, I got my scanner hooked up. I'm gonna go ahead and go key on just so it can read everything. And then, I'll turn the radio off. So we're gonna go scanner. A lot of people tell you need VCDS or VAGCOM to work on these cars, which you don't at all. I've had 10 of these things. I've rebuilt the engines in some of them, swapped injection pumps, timing belt jobs. You don't need VCDS or VAGCOM. A snap-on scanner does everything I've ever needed it to. So to come out here to Volkswagen, US vehicles. This is a 2002. And this is a new Jetta, new body style, with the 1.9 TDI, ALH. Okay, it identified it. And we're gonna go to engine management system. Let it communicate with the ECU. It might take me a minute going through these menus to find the injection quantity because I haven't done it in a while. So we're gonna go to, I believe, data menu, PID list. Oh, I forgot I changed my graphs a while ago. Hang on. We're gonna go A through Z, I believe. No, give me a second. I need to figure this out. PID list. Here we go. Okay, so we are looking for injection quantity, and I don't think it's on this set of this menu. Might be that injection amount. Let me see what the other. Yeah. Let's see what injection is. So I'm gonna go ahead and fire it up. You can see it's at 0 right now. So we're at about 5 at idle, 4.5. I'm gonna go through some other menus because I don't remember this being how it was the last time I monitored it. You can see it's dropping. So let me try and go to a different menu. Let me go to data groups maybe. There it is, injected quantity. No, I guess that is it. So around 3.5, 4. So somewhere right in there at idle is where we want it. And just to be sure, I'm gonna go back through a couple other menus. Maybe injected quantity limitation. Let's see what this is. We'll just come back whenever we get done with the job and make sure all these numbers are about where they are. We can adjust the top cover on that injection pump. See what injection control is. All right. So, in all honesty, I really don't know what a bunch of those numbers mean. Obviously, your injection quantity, it was milligrams cubed, I believe, was the measurement. Obviously, that's how much fuel it's injecting. Now, some of those other numbers, I don't really know exactly what all those mean. I just know that after you take this apart and put it back together, you need it to be the same. So if you have this out of adjustment, it'll be all wacky. So I'm going to set y'all up on the look, you can even see it dripping fuel now just from it running. See it dripping down there on the thermostat housing. Yeah, it's pretty bad. So I'll get y'all set up on the tripod now and tear into this. It's really simple to do. It takes maybe 5-10 minutes. It'll probably take me longer to clean all this off because we don't want any of this dirt and stuff getting in there. So I'm going to spray it down with brake cleaner and then take it apart, maybe wipe it with some rags, and then I'm going to scribe it. And yeah, it's really pretty simple. So here we go. All right, so you can see I got it all cleaned up. Front, back, side, top, bottom, underneath, inside out. Anyway, just got all that dirt off there. We don't want anything falling down inside the injection pump. That'd ruin it. Just sprayed it off with some brake cleaner. Wiped it down with a rag. So, one thing I forgot to mention, this little bolt here takes a special socket, which I don't have. You can use just a regular old socket and hammer it on there. I've done it plenty of times. Works just fine. You'd think for as many of these cars as I worked on, I'd have bought that special socket. I just haven't. So I think these are just like T40s, T30s, 35, something like that. And I'll let y'all know what size this socket is that I hammer on there when I get there. But here we go. So this special bolt right here is I used a 9/32 6-point, just hammered it on there, it comes loose, no big deal. This is a 17 millimeter. You take this cap off here, you might have to put a backup on it, they're both 17s. This little deal here just sits like that, so you just kind of tuck it off to the side, you don't need to mess with it. Just screw the cap back on there so the washers don't get lost. And then these are in fact a T30, as you can see. So I'll get these 3 pulled off, pull this top plate off, and then we'll do these other 3 and get the bottom half pulled off. I do have to scribe it real quick first. So pretty simple so far. So you can see down in here where I scribed it, just with a flathead screwdriver, I made a couple marks right there, and then another set right there, just so we don't get this, you know, forward or backwards too much one way or the other. When we go back together with it, we'll line those marks back up. Hopefully the injection quantity will stay right where it needs to be. So all 3 of those bolts are the same length. You don't have to worry about getting them mixed up. And then this little top cover just comes right off. That O-ring fell. So I'm gonna set it right there. And then where's that O-ring at? There's that O-ring. So that's real simple to replace. You can do that without having to mess with injection quantity if it's your top O-ring that's leaking. This one's pretty brittle. So I'll set it right there. Now we have to pull off the middle layer, the second layer of the housing with those 3 bolts. And this is where the injection quantity comes into play. This one you can do without having to worry about anything. For me, that one's actually not leaking. It's the second one down there that is just pouring diesel out on this car. So I will undo these 3 bolts. I believe they're the same length as well. And then I'll get some video of that coming off. So those 3 bolts are the same length as well. We're just gonna, I believe, actually no, they're different than the other 3. So we'll set them off by themselves. And then this thing, you just wanna pull it straight up and this harness stays connected. So you're just gonna wanna lay it over here. And it just comes straight up like so. And just lay it like that right there. Kind of find a balancing point for it. Yeah. So don't mess with anything in there. Don't slide that, because this little nipple here goes down into that hole. And if you try sliding that back and forth, you'll have a hard time getting that line back up. So all we're gonna do is take this O-ring off that's leaking, set it over here with the other one. I'm gonna take my rag and wipe that surface off, and then we'll get our new O-ring out of the kit, lay it into this groove, put that back on, line up our scribe marks, and then put the cap back on. Pretty simple, just take your time. Don't, there's nothing really complicated about it. Just don't drop any dirt down in there. Don't mess with that little slider. So I got this little surface cleaned off here. I got the new O-ring pressed into its groove. It's got a little alignment tang right there. And then the same with this one. I went ahead and lined up that little triangle flag, and then you just press it in. So now I'm just gonna flip this back over and set it off, or set it on. I'm gonna do this off camera because I need to be sure that I get that little nipple in there. But it really is just as simple as laying it back over and then lining up the scribe marks that I made, and then put those 3 bolts in, and we're good to go. All right, so it's back together. You don't want to over tighten any of these because it is an aluminum housing and you'll strip them out. I got my scribe marks pretty well lined back up, if the camera will focus. You'll be able to know if you get it really far off. When you fire the car up, it'll either have a really low idle or a really high idle, depending which way it's off. And it might take a little bit for it to fire back up because it does lose some injection prime. So let's see how close I got it, if it's got a low or a high idle. There it goes. No check engine light, at least not yet anyway. So let's see what injection quantity is. If it's anywhere close to 3.5, 4 where it was, I'm gonna leave it alone. Shut the door so that buzzer goes off. So it looks like it's at about 4.5, 4.9. So I'm happy with that. It's just high enough to where it doesn't have a high idle, but that'll give it a little bit more power since it's injecting just a little bit more. Now I will go drive it. If it acts up while driving, if it throws a check engine light or anything, then I know I need to bring it back in and just slide that top portion of the pump over just a smidge to bring that down. It's got a range that it'll operate within. You just don't want to be outside of those parameters, or else it'll throw a check engine light, and you'll be able to tell. It'll idle low or high if you have it really, really bad. So yeah, no light so far. So I'll go drive it and then make sure it's not going to act up or anything. And then you obviously want to come and check for leaks. I don't know if y'all are going to be able to hear me over this little engine, but before I could see diesel just pouring out of here, and it's nice and dry now. I mean, as soon as I would fire it up, it would just pour diesel out of there. So it's nice and dry now. We'll go put a couple miles on it, come back, make sure it's not going to leak, no engine light. So I'll go do that real quick, and then I'll come back to you guys. All right, guys, it seems like it's fine. There's no engine lights. Everything's normal. This car's stock, it's not deleted or tuned or anything. It's an automatic, so just my daily driver. Was fixing a little diesel leak on it. I was getting tired of the hard starts, but you can see it's good to go. It's got full power, not acting crazy, no engine light. So I'll pull it back into the shop when I get back. I'm just a mile or so down the road, stick it on a little loop. But yeah, I'll pull it back in and make sure that it's not leaking anymore. Make sure everything's sealed good on it. But other than that, you know, that's pretty much it. It's a real easy job. It took me longer to make this video than it did to actually do the work. So real simple, nothing to be afraid of. Just scribe the housings and line it back up. Check your injection quantity if you can. If not, just go off of your RPM, whether it's high or low. And yeah, that's about it.